He woke up next to the chief's daughter. By dawn, 321 warriors waited for the wedding. He arrived in the village as a stranger, carrying only a small bag and a quiet heart. The road that led there was dusty and long, cutting through hills that had watched generations rise and fall. He had been invited as a helper for a seasonal gathering, nothing more. He was not important, not powerful, and certainly not someone whose name would be remembered. At least, that is what he believed when he stepped past the wooden gate and felt dozens of eyes turn toward him. The village was alive with movement. Children ran between huts, elders sat in circles speaking softly, and the smell of firewood and cooked grain filled the air. Everyone seemed to know where they belonged, everyone except him. He stood still for a moment, unsure where to go, until an older man pointed him toward a guest shelter near the edge of the village. The gesture was kind but distant, as if reminding him that he was welcome, but only for now. As the day passed, he helped where he could. He carried water, gathered firewood, and followed instructions without question. He noticed that people watched him quietly, not with anger but with curiosity. This village followed old customs, and outsiders were rare. Every movement he made felt seen. Every word felt heavy. Still, no one treated him poorly, and that gave him some comfort. As the sun lowered, the village began to change. Drums were brought out. Fires were lit in careful circles. The gathering was not just a celebration. It was a ritual that marked an important time of the year. Elders wore traditional clothing, and younger men stood taller than usual, proud to be seen. Women moved with purpose, preparing food and guiding children away from the fires. He stayed close to the guest shelter, watching from a distance. He did not want to offend anyone by stepping into a space he did not understand. That was when he saw her for the first time. She was walking beside an older woman, listening carefully as if every word mattered. There was nothing loud about her presence, yet people made space as she passed. He noticed how conversations softened near her, how eyes followed her with respect. He did not know who she was, but he felt that she mattered deeply to the village. Later, he learned from another guest that she was the chief's daughter. The knowledge made him uncomfortable. He looked away, suddenly aware of how small he was in this place. He reminded himself that he was only there to help and would leave once the gathering ended. There was no reason for their paths to cross again, but fate does not ask for permission. As night settled, the drums grew louder. The air felt charged, as if something important was unfolding. Stories were shared, voices rising and falling with laughter and memory. He sat near the fire with others, listening more than speaking. Someone handed him a warm drink made from local herbs. He hesitated, then accepted, not wanting to appear rude. The firelight danced on faces, turning shadows into stories of their own. Time moved strangely. He felt relaxed in a way he hadn't felt in years. His long journey, his worries, his loneliness, all seemed far away. At some point, he noticed her sitting across the fire. She was listening to an elder speak, her expression calm and thoughtful. When she looked up, their eyes met for a brief second. There was no smile, no signal, just a quiet moment of awareness. He looked away quickly, his heart beating faster for reasons he could not explain. The night went on. Music softened. Fires burned lower. People began to leave in small groups. Someone touched his shoulder and gestured for him to follow. Tired and trusting, he did. He assumed he was being guided back to the guest shelter. Instead, he was led to a smaller hut near the center of the village. He did not question it. Exhaustion weighed on him, and the warmth of the fire still clung to his clothes. Inside the hut, the light was low. He thanked the person who brought him and lay down on a woven mat, planning only to rest his eyes. Sleep came quickly. When he woke, the world felt wrong. The air was cool, pale light slipping through the small opening of the hut. For a moment he did not remember where he was. Then he became aware of someone breathing beside him. His body stiffened. Slowly, carefully, he turned his head. She was there. The chief's daughter lay on the mat beside him, already awake, staring up at the ceiling as if lost in thought. There was space between them, no confusion in her expression, but the reality of the situation hit him like a sudden storm. He sat up too fast, his heart racing. Panic filled his chest. In this village, in this culture, this moment meant something far greater than misunderstanding. She turned to look at him then, her gaze steady. "You're awake," she said quietly. His voice failed him. "I didn't know. I was told to rest, I thought." "I know," she replied. "This was not planned." That did not help. He ran his hands through his hair, trying to think. Outside, the village was beginning to stir. Morning was coming. With it would come eyes, questions, and laws he did not understand. "I should leave," he said, already rising. She sat up as well, calm but firm. "If you leave now, it will be worse." He froze. "Worse than this?" She did not answer right away. Instead, she stood and adjusted her shawl, moving with the confidence of someone raised in responsibility. "There are rules here," she said, "old ones." Fear tightened his chest. "I never meant to disrespect anyone." "I know," she said again. "But intent is not always what matters." Outside, a drum sounded once. Then again, his breath caught. "What does that mean?" She looked toward the door. "It means the elders are awake." Another sound followed, footsteps, many footsteps. He felt suddenly very small, trapped between walls that now seemed to close in. He had come as a helper, a nobody. Now, without choosing it, he stood at the center of something far bigger. The drumbeat echoed again, slower this time, heavier. She met his eyes. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "you must stand calmly. Fear will only dishonor you." Before he could respond, a shadow crossed the doorway. Voices rose outside, not angry but serious. As dawn broke over the village, he realized his life had already changed, and there was no turning back. Sounds that were once gentle now carried weight, soft footsteps, low voices, the crackle of dying firewood. The man stood near the doorway of the hut, unsure whether to step out or stay inside. Every choice felt dangerous. Outside, elders gathered in a wide circle near the central fire. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were sharp with purpose. They did not rush. In this village, important matters were never hurried. Time itself seemed to pause when tradition was about to speak. The chief arrived last. He walked slowly, his posture straight, his presence commanding without effort. Years of leadership rested in the lines of his face. He did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. That silence was more frightening than shouting ever could be. The man lowered his head out of respect. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. The chief's daughter stepped forward beside her father. She did not hide. She did not look down. Her calmness surprised everyone, including the man. It was as if she had already accepted whatever path lay ahead. An elder cleared his throat and spoke first. His voice was steady, practiced. He explained what everyone already knew, that the man had been found in the same resting place as the chief's daughter after a sacred night. In their culture, this was not a small matter. It was not gossip. It was not something to be laughed away. It was a crossing of a line drawn long before memory. The man felt his knees weaken. He wanted to speak, to explain every detail, but he did not interrupt. He had learned quickly that respect here meant patience. Another elder spoke next, reminding the gathering of the law passed down through generations. Outsiders were welcomed, yes, but certain boundaries were protected fiercely. When those boundaries were crossed, the village did not ask why first. It asked what must be done to restore balance. The chief listened without reacting. When the elders finished, all eyes turned to the man. He swallowed and stepped forward. His voice shook at first, but he forced himself to speak clearly. He explained how he had been guided to the hut, how he had believed it was meant for guests, how sleep had taken him before questions could rise. He did not blame anyone. He did not defend himself too strongly. He spoke only the truth as he knew it. When he finished, the circle was silent. The chief's daughter spoke then. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. She confirmed his words. She made it clear there was no plan, no secret meeting, no intention hidden in shadows. Her honesty caused a ripple through the elders. Some nodded slightly, others remained unreadable, but truth did not erase tradition. An elder stepped forward and raised a carved staff. He announced that the law did not judge intention alone, it judged outcome. The night had passed, the dawn had come, the line had been crossed. Outside the circle, movement stirred. The man turned and saw them. Rows of warriors stood beyond the gathering space, 321 in total. They were not aggressive. Their weapons remained lowered. They stood as witnesses, not executioners. Their presence was not meant to threaten but to honor the seriousness of the moment. They represented the weight of the law, the strength of unity, and the protection of the village's future. The sight made the man's chest tighten. He had never imagined himself standing before such numbers, not as an enemy, but not yet as a friend either. The chief finally spoke. His voice was deep, measured, and calm. He addressed the man directly, asking him if he understood the situation he stood in. The man nodded, though understanding felt incomplete. How could someone raised elsewhere fully grasp laws older than written words? The chief then asked a question that surprised everyone. He asked not about guilt, but about respect. Did the man respect the village? Did he respect its people? Did he respect the woman beside him? The man answered without hesitation, yes, with everything he had. The chief studied him carefully as if looking beyond the surface, searching for truth hidden in the man's fear. Then came the choice. The elder explained it clearly so there could be no confusion. The man could accept responsibility under the law and remain, his life forever tied to the village. Or he could leave before the sun reached its highest point, never to return. Exile was not punishment, they said. It was protection for the village and for him. The word exile echoed in his mind. Leaving meant losing safety, shelter, and perhaps his honor. Staying meant a future he had never planned. He glanced at the chief's daughter. She did not look away. There was no pressure in her eyes, only strength and acceptance of whatever answer he chose. Time stretched. The warriors remained still. Children were led away quietly. The village waited. He thought of the road that brought him here, of how lost he had been before. Of how, despite the fear, something about this place felt solid, real, grounded in purpose. Finally, he spoke. He said he would not run. He said he would not dishonor her or the village by fleeing. He did not speak of love or destiny. He spoke only of responsibility and respect. A murmur passed through the elders. The chief closed his eyes briefly, then nodded once. The decision was not yet complete, but the path was set. As the sun climbed higher, preparations began quietly, not for celebration yet, but for acknowledgement. The warriors shifted positions, forming lines not of threat, but of protection. The village moved forward, step by step, toward something that could no longer be undone. And the man understood one thing clearly now. The night had not just changed his mourning. It had changed his life. The village did not rush into noise or celebration. After the chief's decision, everything slowed, as if the land itself needed time to breathe. The man was guided to a quiet space near the edge of the central grounds. It was not a place of isolation, but of waiting. Two elders sat nearby, not to guard him, but to observe. Their presence was calm, almost comforting, yet it reminded him that every step from now on would be watched. He sat on the ground, hands resting on his knees, staring at the earth. His thoughts moved faster than his breath. He wondered how a single night could pull him into a life he had never imagined. Fear still lived inside him, but something else had begun to grow alongside it, a sense of seriousness, a weight that demanded honesty. The chief's daughter was taken to another space, surrounded by women of the village. He did not see her again that morning, but he felt her absence more than her presence. She had faced the elders without fear, and that strength stayed with him. After some time, an elder approached him and spoke gently. He explained that before anything could move forward, the man would be questioned, not to trap him but to understand him. The village did not bind lives together blindly. Even ancient laws required clarity. He was asked about his past, where he came from, who raised him, what values guided him when no one was watching. He answered slowly, carefully choosing truth over pride. He spoke of simple work, of learning respect the hard way, of mistakes that taught him humility. He did not try to make himself sound better than he was. The elders listened without interruption. They asked him what he believed commitment meant, not just in words but in action. He said it meant staying even when leaving was easier. It meant showing up when silence would be safer. His voice trembled slightly, but he did not stop. At one point, the questioning paused. The chief arrived quietly and sat across from him. No one announced his presence. He simply was there. The chief studied the man closely. He did not ask many questions. Instead, he watched how the man held himself, how he reacted to silence, how he breathed when no one spoke. In this village, truth was often found between words. Then the chief asked one final question. "If my daughter walks beside you," he said, "will she walk ahead of fear or behind it?" The man took a long breath. He did not answer quickly. He thought of the chief's daughter's steady eyes, her calm voice, her strength under pressure. He spoke honestly. He said he could not promise perfection, but he could promise that fear would never decide his actions. He would walk beside her, not above, not behind. The chief nodded once. Outside, the village prepared quietly. Fires were cleaned. Paths were swept. Nothing was loud, yet everything was intentional. The warriors remained nearby, their presence steady and respectful. They were not there to force a future, but to protect a process that had guided the village for generations. As the sun reached its highest point, the man was asked to stand in the center of the grounds. The elders formed a half circle around him. The chief's daughter was brought forward. She stood tall, her expression calm, her posture strong. She did not appear trapped or uncertain. She appeared aware. An elder spoke to her directly, asking if she accepted the path placed before her, not because of pressure but because of understanding. She answered clearly, yes. Not because she had no choice, but because she believed in the strength of shared responsibility. The man felt something shift inside him. This was no longer about fear or survival. It was about honor. The chief stepped forward and placed his hand between them, not joining them yet, but marking the space they would soon share. He spoke of duty, not as a burden but as a foundation. He reminded them both that tradition was not meant to trap, but to protect. Then came the final test. The man was told that accepting responsibility meant staying in the village, not for days or weeks, but for life. It meant learning its ways, serving its people, and placing the community before himself. There would be no turning back once he agreed. Silence filled the air. He looked at the chief's daughter. She met his gaze, not asking, not demanding, simply present. He nodded. He said yes. A quiet murmur passed through the village, not excitement but recognition. The elders exchanged looks. The warriors shifted slightly, forming two lines that opened a path toward the central fire. The chief placed his daughter's hand into the man's hand. It was not a celebration yet. It was a beginning. As they stood there together, the man realized that the fear that had once ruled his thoughts had faded. In its place stood something heavier but stronger, a sense of purpose he had never known. The sun dipped slightly as clouds passed overhead. The village moved forward. And so did he. The night before dawn felt longer than any night the man had ever known. He did not sleep much. Instead, he lay awake listening to the quiet sounds of the village, the soft crack of firewood, the distant steps of those who kept watch, the wind brushing against the huts. Everything felt calm on the surface, yet beneath it all was a deep sense of waiting. He understood now that this was not just about him. The village was preparing itself. Every action, every pause followed a rhythm shaped by generations. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was careless. Before first light, an elder came to him and motioned for him to rise. No words were needed. He washed his face in cool water and dressed in simple clothing prepared for him. It was not fine or decorative. It was practical, clean, and respectful. As he stepped outside, the sky was still dark, but a thin line of light stretched across the horizon. The air was cold and clear. Across the open ground, shapes began to appear. One by one, warriors took their places. They moved quietly, forming long lines that stretched from the central fire toward the edge of the village. There were 321 of them, standing shoulder to shoulder. They did not shout. They did not raise their voices. Their strength came from their stillness. The man felt a deep pull in his chest, not fear this time, but awareness. He understood that this moment would be remembered, not just by him, but by everyone present. The chief arrived as the first light touched the ground. He wore no crown, no symbols of power, only the marks of responsibility earned through time. Behind him walked his daughter. She looked different now, not changed but focused. Her movements were steady. Her expression was calm yet serious. She did not look around. She walked forward, eyes ahead, as if she already knew the path. The man stood where he had been told, near the beginning of the lines formed by the warriors. His hands were steady, though his heart beat strong. When she reached him, she stopped. For a moment, neither spoke. An elder stepped forward and raised his hand. The village fell completely silent. He spoke of dawn as a symbol, not of endings, but of beginnings. He reminded everyone that light does not erase darkness. It simply shows the way forward. His words were slow and simple, meant to be understood by all, young and old alike. The man was asked to step forward. As he did, the lines of warriors parted slightly, creating a clear path toward the central fire. The fire burned low but steady, its warmth visible even in the growing light. Each step the man took felt heavier than the last, not because of fear, but because of meaning. He stopped before the fire. The chief approached and spoke directly to him. He asked if the man still stood by his choice, knowing fully what it meant. The man answered without hesitation, yes. The chief then asked his daughter the same question. She answered clearly, her voice steady, yes. There was no cheer, no reaction, only acceptance. The chief placed their hands together. In that moment, the man felt the full weight of what he had accepted. This was not about celebration or pride. It was about standing firm when life demanded more than comfort. The elder spoke again, explaining that the warriors stood not as guards but as witnesses. They represented the village's promise, to protect the union, to guide it, and to hold it accountable. Their presence was not meant to intimidate, but to honor the seriousness of commitment. As the sun rose higher, its light passed through the lines of warriors, touching faces marked by discipline and loyalty. The village watched quietly. Children stood close to their families. Elders observed with thoughtful eyes. The man felt a sense of grounding settle inside him. For the first time since arriving, he did not feel like an outsider standing at the edge. He felt like someone stepping into responsibility. After the ceremony at the fire, the couple was guided through the village paths. They did not walk alone. Elders walked ahead and warriors followed behind at a respectful distance. This walk was not for display. It was a lesson, showing that a shared path is supported by many. As they moved, villagers placed small symbols along the path, stones, woven threads, carved pieces of wood. Each represented guidance, patience, strength, and unity. No one spoke loudly. Words were not needed. The man noticed how the chief's daughter walked beside him, not pulling him forward, not falling behind. Her pace matched his. That simple balance spoke more than any promise. When they reached the end of the path, they stopped near a quiet gathering space. Food was prepared, but this was not yet a feast. It was a shared meal, simple and meaningful. Elders joined them first, offering words of wisdom. They spoke of listening before speaking, of choosing calm over pride, of remembering that strength often appears in quiet moments. The chief spoke last. He reminded them both that tradition is not a cage but a guide. He said that true respect is shown not when things are easy but when they are hard. He placed his hand on the man's shoulder, not as a warning but as recognition. As the morning continued, the warriors slowly dispersed, returning to their duties. Their job was done. They had witnessed the beginning of a bond now protected by the village itself. The man felt a strange peace settle over him. He knew challenges would come. He knew mistakes were possible, but he also knew he was no longer standing alone. The sun climbed fully into the sky. Dawn had passed, and what remained was a path forward, clear, demanding, and real. Time did not move fast after that morning. It moved steadily, like the river near the village that never rushed yet never stopped. The man stayed, just as he had promised. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became months. With each passing day, the village stopped seeing him as the outsider who arrived with a small bag and uncertain steps. Instead, they began to see him as someone who showed up every morning, ready to work, ready to learn. He learned the rhythm of the land. He learned when the soil was ready for planting and when it needed rest. He learned how to listen more than he spoke. Elders corrected him when he made mistakes, and he accepted their words without pride. That humility earned him respect faster than strength ever could. The chief's daughter walked her own path as well. She did not lose herself in the union. Instead, she grew stronger within it. She continued to guide others, especially the younger women, teaching them patience and courage. She spoke wisely in gatherings, and when she did, people listened. Not because of her father, but because her words carried truth. Together, they learned balance. Some days were quiet and simple. Other days tested them. There were misunderstandings, moments of doubt, and times when the man questioned whether he truly belonged. During those moments, he remembered the dawn when the warriors stood in silence, not to threaten, but to witness. That memory reminded him that belonging was built, not gifted. The chief watched closely but from a distance. He did not interfere unless needed. When he spoke, his words were short but meaningful. He treated the man not as someone who owed him, but as someone responsible for his choices. That trust became a heavy but welcome weight. Seasons changed. The village faced challenges like any other. Storms damaged fields. Disagreements rose between families. Once a group from a neighboring land arrived with sharp words and suspicion. During that tense moment, the man stepped forward, not with anger but with calm respect. He spoke carefully, choosing peace over pride. The elders noticed. The chief noticed. That day, something shifted permanently. The villagers began to turn to him not just for work but for counsel. He never pretended to know more than he did. He listened, then spoke simply. That honesty made people trust him. Years later, children would hear stories about the dawn of 321 warriors. But the story was no longer told as a warning. It was told as a lesson about responsibility, a lesson about standing still when fear demands escape. The man and the chief's daughter built a life rooted in effort. They shared laughter and silence. They supported each other through loss and joy. Their home became a place where others felt welcome, where conversations lasted long into the evening. One night, as they sat outside watching the fire settle into embers, the man realized something quietly powerful. The night that once filled him with fear had led him here, not by force but by choice. He had not been trapped by tradition. He had been guided by it. And in choosing to stay, to stand, and to respect what came before him, he found something greater than safety. He found purpose. The village continued. Life continued. But that dawn, when warriors stood still and a stranger chose responsibility, remained a story worth remembering. You've hit the free plan limit for GPT-5. Responses will use another model until you're Limmy.